No one expected the silence to feel this heavy. For months, telescopes across the world had been tracking a strange visitor from beyond the star's 3-eye atlas. A frozen wanderer that wasn't supposed to stop, wasn't supposed to think, and definitely wasn't supposed to change direction. But as October 29th approached, something began to shift. The object, racing toward its closest point to the sun, its perihelion started behaving in ways no natural comet ever should. Its light wasn't random. It pulsed, not with chaos, but with rhythm, almost like a heartbeat echoing through space. Scientists thought it would simply sweep past the sun and vanish forever. But the latest orbital data suggested a new possibility, one that left every analyst, from Pasadena to Geneva, whispering the same word. Maneuver. What kind of comet performs a maneuver? What kind of object plays with gravity itself? NASA's GOES-19 satellite caught faint traces, a dim, ghostly signature near the edge of the solar corona. For 6 days, 3-eye Atlas glided through the blinding light of plasma, perfectly steady, perfectly silent. Then it slowed. The data confirmed it. 3-eye Atlas was preparing to do something. Its trajectory was no longer predictable. The calculations that once described its motion broke down. Something was interfering, or someone, and October 29th was the moment it all lined up. So tonight, we'll go deeper. We'll trace every whisper of energy, every impossible flash, every fragment of light that has escaped its shadow. Because if 3-eye Atlas is about to perform an Oberth, maneuver a slingshot using the sun's gravity to redirect its course, then this isn't just an object. It's a mission. And if that's true, where is it heading next? When it was first discovered, scientists thought 3-eye Atlas was nothing more than another icy rock. But normal comets don't stay perfectly cold while racing through sunlight strong enough to melt metal. Normal comets don't ignore the physics of heat, radiation, and inertia, and they don't hover, motionless, in defiance of gravity. The data didn't lie at 735 watts per square meter. The object should have boiled into a glowing mist. Instead, it stayed dark, silent, no heat, no vapor, no outgassing. It was absorbing energy, not releasing it. And that silence, that impossible calm, sent shock waves through every control room on Earth. Because the universe doesn't stay quiet without a reason. As infrared arrays swept across the sky, the faint halo around 3-eye Atlas flickered in perfect intervals. It wasn't dust. It wasn't gas. It looked layered, structured like a shell built for purpose. Inside that shell, signals began to pulse. Electromagnetic bursts too clean to be random, repeating in patterns that matched no natural frequency. Almost as if it was scanning, observing, thinking. A senior engineer at JPL summed it up best. It's acting like it knows what it's doing. If that's true, then everything changes. 3-eye Atlas could be using the sun not as a destination, but as a launch pad. The Oberth maneuver, the same trick our spacecraft used to accelerate using gravity, allows a vessel to change course with almost no fuel. If it fires thrusters at the right time, it could fling itself to any planet in the solar system. October 29th is that moment, its window to decide. Accelerate. And it heads toward Jupiter by 2026. Decelerate and it could spiral inward toward us. For the first time, we are watching an object that seems to choose its own path, and that's what makes this so terrifying. Maybe this isn't a comet at all. Maybe this is a probe, ancient, autonomous, and precise, using our star as a power source. Whatever it is, it's moving with intent. And as it nears the sun, one truth becomes clear. This is not a random visitor. It's a messenger. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll uncover where this mysterious traveler might have come from, and why Jupiter, the king of planets, could be its next destination. Every object that enters our solar system follows a rule. The deeper it falls toward the sun, the faster it moves. And the faster it moves, the harder it becomes to stop. But 3i Atlas didn't just stop. It chose to. When you strip away the noise, the speculation, and the fear, what remains is a single truth. Whatever this thing is, it's under control. So the question isn't how it did this, it's why. To understand that, we have to look ahead, beyond Mars, beyond the asteroid belt, toward a world that has fascinated humanity for centuries, Jupiter. It's not just a planet. It's a fortress of gravity, the largest body in our solar system. A place capable of shielding, destroying, or saving entire worlds. If you wanted to hide something, you'd hide it there. If you wanted to build something, that's where you'd begin. Jupiter is surrounded by more than 90 moons, each a world of its own. But 3 of them stand out: Europa, Callisto, and Ganymede. Each one holds something precious: oceans, vast reservoirs of water buried beneath thick crusts of ice. Water, the foundation of life, energy, and fuel. To us, these are alien worlds. To an interstellar intelligence, they are real estate. Now, if you were an advanced species moving from star to star, you wouldn't land on Earth first. That would be suicide. 8 billion humans, military satellites, a hostile biosphere. It's a swarm of risk. No, you'd stay quiet. You'd study from afar. You'd find a base of operations somewhere rich in resources, far enough from detection, but close enough to observe. That base would be Jupiter. Its radiation belt forms a natural shield, hiding signals and confusing radar. Its moons are soaked with water and energy sources, and its gravity is so strong that any ship anchored there would be nearly invisible to our instruments unless it wanted to be found. To reach it efficiently, a spacecraft would use the O-berth maneuver, a burst of propulsion near the sun, when gravitational energy is at its peak. That's exactly what scientists suspect 3i Atlas is about to do. So imagine this. On October 29th, as it dives past the burning surface of the sun, the object fires not rockets, but something silent. No flames, no exhaust, no radiation spike, just a shift tiny, almost invisible, but enough to bend its path toward Jupiter. It would then drift outward, invisible, silent, and unstoppable. Astronomers ran simulations of this possibility. If it nudged its trajectory by just a fraction of a degree, it would intercept Jupiter's orbit in March of 2026. And from there, it could position itself to reach Europa or Ganymede with surgical precision, almost as if That had been the plan all along. When the data was presented to NASA's Deep Space Network, a quiet unease spread through the control rooms. Someone whispered, "That's too perfect to be random." And for a moment, even the skeptics fell silent. But it wasn't just the path that made people nervous. It was what was behind it. Because as 3I Atlas moved closer to the Sun, multiple solar probes, including Parker and Solar Orbiter, began detecting something unusual. Faint bursts of electromagnetic energy, structured like repeating sequences, mathematically ordered, evenly spaced. Not cosmic noise, not solar interference, something else. When decoded, the signal revealed a pattern, a sequence of prime numbers, followed by one of the most recognizable constants in the universe, pi written out to 24 decimal places. It wasn't a broadcast, it was an introduction. Something out there was saying, "We understand mathematics. We understand you." SETI cryptographers spent days analyzing the signal. They sent a reply, embedding the atomic numbers of hydrogen and oxygen universal symbols for water. Minutes later, the response came. It was a grid of numbers that, when plotted visually, formed a map. Earth's continents, our oceans, and over them small dots, perfect matches for the orbital paths of our military satellites. It wasn't a threat, it was a demonstration. Someone or something was showing that they already knew us. By now, the classified chatter among agencies had gone silent. Publicly, they called it a natural anomaly. Privately, they were preparing for something far beyond natural. In a report later leaked to European observatories, the predicted course showed 3I Atlas performing its solar slingshot, then aligning directly toward Jupiter's orbit, not colliding, not impacting, but arriving. Almost as if to dark. And if that's true, then this isn't a comet. This is a vessel. Imagine the scale. A structure large enough to survive the heat of a star. A mass that can stop and start with precision beyond our physics. And inside a silence so deep that even light disappears into it. That's what's heading toward Jupiter. Maybe it's observation. Maybe it's colonization. Or maybe it's something else, something we don't yet have words for. Either way, the countdown has already begun. Because when 3I Atlas completes its maneuver, we'll finally know if it's leaving us behind. Or if it's coming back. Stay with me. In the next part, we'll explore the origin theory. Where could something like this have come from? And why do some scientists believe its home star might be one of the closest neighbors to our own Barnard's star? A red dwarf creeping ever closer to Earth. Every mystery has an origin. Every traveler has a home. And if 3I Atlas truly came from the void between stars, then somewhere out there is the place that built it. When astronomers traced its trajectory backward, plotting the line across years, decades, and centuries, they found something strange. The path didn't lead to deep, random space. It pointed toward a nearby star, one that's been quietly drifting closer to us for thousands of years. That star is Barnard's star. Barnard's star is a small red dwarf, faint, cold, and ancient. It sits just under 6 light years away, in the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. You can't see it with the naked eye, but through a telescope, it glows like a lonely ember. Astronomers have studied it for more than a century. It moves faster across our night sky than almost any other star, racing toward our solar system at 140 kilometers per second. But what makes it fascinating isn't its speed, it's what orbits it. Because around that dim little star are planets. At least 2 confirmed, maybe more. And one of them, Barnard's star B, is believed to be a frozen super-Earth. It sits in the habitable zone, close enough to feel the faint warmth of its star, but cold enough for ice to survive. And that's where the theory begins. If you wanted to send something across the galaxy, a red dwarf would be the perfect launch site. It's stable, quiet, long-lived a star that burns for trillions of years. Any civilization that evolved there would have time. Time to learn, to build, to reach. And if they wanted to explore, they wouldn't send a fleet. They'd send something small, efficient, maybe even alive in its own way. A machine designed to survive the deep freeze of interstellar space. A probe dark, self-repairing, patient. Sound familiar? That's the description scientists are now whispering about 3I Atlas. Let's do the math. At its observed speed, about 60 kilometers per second, it would take roughly 30,000 years to travel from Barnard's star to our solar system. 30,000 years of silence. 30,000 years drifting through darkness colder than thought. If it truly came from there, it means it was launched when humanity was still carving tools from stone. When mammoths still walked the tundra. When the night sky was worshipped, not studied. Think about that while our ancestors painted caves. Something from another sun may have already been on its way to us. When scientists loaded the object's coordinates into simulation software, they noticed something uncanny. The incoming trajectory of 3I Atlas and the direction of Barnard's star are separated by just a few degrees, about the width of your hand stretched against the night sky. That's too close to dismiss. Statistically, it's almost impossible for 2 unrelated points in the sky to align that precisely by chance. And the kicker? Barnard's star isn't moving away from us. It's coming toward us. That means, in cosmic terms, we're on a collision course, not physically, but gravitationally. 2 neighborhoods of space, slowly drifting into the same street. If 3I Atlas came from there, then this isn't just a visit. It's a reintroduction. Now, let's speculate, because that's what makes this so fascinating. If an advanced civilization wanted to explore nearby systems, they'd use what we call self-replicating probes, a concept first proposed by physicist John von Neumann. Machines that build copies of themselves using the resources of the worlds they find. They don't age. They don't sleep. They just spread. Imagine one of those machines leaving Barnard's star tens of thousands of years ago, carrying with it instructions to map every planet it encounters, to learn, to wait, and maybe one day to awaken. And when it finally reached us, it might have chosen the perfect moment to act, when our telescopes were advanced enough to see it, but not advanced enough to stop it. Some researchers call this the silent probe hypothesis. It's not designed to make contact. It's designed to observe quietly until the species it's watching becomes interesting. And maybe That moment has come. Because what better time than now? We've covered our world in satellites, radar, and noise. We've started reaching out beyond our home planet. We've even launched messages into space, inviting whoever's out there to find us. Maybe they did. If 3I Atlas came from Barnard's star, then what we're witnessing isn't a coincidence. It's part of a pattern, one that's older than civilization itself. A slow, deliberate network of machines moving from star to star, seeding the galaxy with silent observers, each one waiting until their creators decide it's time to reveal themselves. And maybe, just maybe, October 29th was the trigger. The moment when one of them finally woke up. So as we watch this dark traveler loop around our sun, every signal we detect, every flicker of light we analyze, might not be random noise. It might be the echo of an ancient message, one that began on a frozen world circling a dying red dwarf. A message that says, "We're not alone. We never were." In the next part, we'll go deeper into what happens next. Because if 3I Atlas truly performs a slingshot toward Jupiter, we may be witnessing the first deliberate movement of an extraterrestrial craft in recorded history. And the terrifying part? That movement may already have begun. The closer it moved to the sun, the quieter the world became. Astronomers who had spent months tracking 3I Atlas began describing the feeling as almost unnatural, as if something immense and intelligent was holding its breath. October 29th. That was the date on everyone's calendar, the day of perihelion, when 3I Atlas would reach its closest point to the Sunday. For most comets, this is where they burn brightest. But for this one, it's where everything could change. At first, the data looked normal, a steep descent, velocity climbing past 68 kilometers per second, radiation levels spiking. But then, something subtle started happening. The light curve flattened. The expected brightening, the burst of vapor and gas that comets usually produce near the sun, never came. Instead, instruments picked up something no one expected. A faint, pulsing reflection, perfectly timed, evenly spaced, repeating every 11 minutes. It wasn't natural. It was precise, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. NASA's Parker Solar Probe, hovering within the corona, caught the first visual anomaly. A flicker, a brief silhouette crossing the sun's blinding edge. It wasn't vapor or dust. It was geometric, sharp, defined, almost mechanical. One frame, that's all it took. The entire analysis team went silent. When enhanced, the image showed something extraordinary light bending around the object instead of scattering off it. That meant one thing: a gravitational distortion. To produce that kind of effect, the object had to be both massive and incredibly dense, far beyond ice or rock. It was behaving like it had its own gravity field. Back on Earth, the Deep Space Array started reporting fluctuations in solar neutrino data, the ghost particles that pass through everything. They were being disturbed. Something near the sun was bending them. And at that precise moment, 7:14 UTC 3I Atlas vanished. Not faded, not disintegrated, vanished. Every satellite, every observatory, every probe went dark at once. Telemetry flatlined. Optical sensors, reported a burst of static, a clean white flash. Then nothing. For nearly 8 hours, the world waited. No signal, no light, just the crushing silence of space. In mission control rooms from Houston to Tokyo, operators stared at empty data streams, refreshing, recalculating, praying it was a software glitch. But deep down, everyone knew something had happened. Then, just before midnight UTC, a single detection came in from the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory SOHO. It wasn't visual data, it was gravitational. The sun's corona had rippled. Something had passed through it, and when the readings were translated into velocity, the numbers didn't make sense. 3I Atlas had not been destroyed. It had accelerated. By all laws of physics, that was impossible. Objects near the sun lose energy due to drag and radiation. But this one, it had gained energy. A lot of it. The estimated velocity spike was over 120 kilometers per second. That's more than double its entry speed. The only explanation was an Oberth maneuver, a controlled burn timed to exploit the sun's gravity and hurl itself outward. But comets don't perform maneuvers. They don't choose when to accelerate. This one just did. When the object reappeared, it was already beyond Mercury's orbit, cold again, dark again, perfectly silent. It hadn't vaporized. It hadn't fragmented. It was intact. Every telescope that caught a glimpse reported the same thing. It was glowing faintly, not from sunlight, but from within. A dim, cyan pulse, rhythmic and steady, almost alive. Spectrographic scans detected trace emissions of nickel, but no iron. That shouldn't exist naturally. In the universe, nickel and iron always come together, they're cosmic twins. The only time they're separated is in advanced manufacturing. Somewhere, someone had built this. The pattern of light flickers around 3I Atlas began repeating in mathematical order, first prime numbers, then Fibonacci sequences, then intervals matching the hydrogen spectral line. Every frequency seemed to say the same thing. We are not random. It was transmitting, but not in our language. It was speaking in the universal language of physics. Every 11 minutes, a pulse almost like a beacon. Every 55 minutes, a long wave burst something deeper, slower, like a heartbeat beneath a heartbeat. When decoded visually, the data formed a spiral pattern, one that mirrored the trajectory of Jupiter. Its next stop, the silence across scientific agencies became official. NASA classified the object's new data under DSN Priority Red, restricted to defense-level clearance. But leaks always find a way through. And one of those leaks revealed something chilling. The projected course showed 3I Atlas leaving the sun's gravitational sphere and aligning perfectly for a transfer orbit to Jupiter. Arrival date, March 17th, 2026. This was no random path. This was a mission timeline. In the following days, small bursts of electromagnetic static appeared on every receiver tuned to its frequency. The signal wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was structured. At exactly 23:23 UTC, the final burst before total silence was recorded. A single tone lasting 12 seconds. When analyzed, its waveform spelled out something unexpected. The harmonic structure matched human speech patterns, but stretched, slowed, and fragmented. Some thought it was coincidence. Others thought it was contact. And then, just like that, the signal ended. It hasn't returned since. But there's something bigger here, something almost no one is talking about. Because the same week 3I Atlas vanished behind the sun, Earth's magnetic field began to behave strangely. Sensors recorded fluctuations, tiny, rhythmic, matching the object's old pulse sequence. It's as if our planet was being pinged, not attacked, not harmed, just noticed. And maybe that's all this is. A cosmic knock on the door, a test to see if we're paying attention. So what happens next? If 3I Atlas is heading toward Jupiter, that gives us about 5 months before it reaches the king of planets. 5 months before we find out if this thing is here to study, to hide, or to begin something entirely new. Because when a visitor from another star uses our sun as a launch pad, one thing is certain. It's not passing through. It's staying. In the next part, we'll explore what scientists believe could happen when 3I Atlas finally reaches Jupiter, and why that world, with its radiation, magnetic storms, and hidden oceans, might be the key to something much larger, something that could change our understanding of what life in the universe really means. By the time 3I Atlas cleared the sun's glare, our world had already changed. Not physically, but mentally. Humanity was watching again. Every telescope, every array, every dish turned toward the void, waiting for it to reappear. And when it did, it wasn't a comet anymore. It was a presence, a silent, glowing wanderer making its way toward the largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter, the ancient guardian. Jupiter is more than a planet. It's a gatekeeper, a cosmic giant that protects Earth by swallowing comets, asteroids, and debris. Without it, our planet might have been bombarded into extinction long ago. But this time, Jupiter isn't swallowing anything. It's receiving something. The trajectory of 3I Atlas isn't random. It's too perfect a smooth curve sliding right into Jupiter's orbital path. And the projected point of approach? Ganymede. To understand what that means, you have to picture this world properly. Ganymede isn't just another moon. It's a planet-sized world larger than Mercury. It has its own magnetic field, the only moon in the solar system to have one. It's wrapped in ice, hundreds of kilometers thick, hiding beneath it a deep ocean of liquid water, maybe salt water, maybe something else. Somewhere down there, the temperature and pressure could support life. NASA's Juno spacecraft confirmed it years ago, an entire ocean world orbiting within Jupiter's storming shadow. And that's where 3I Atlas is heading. Every orbit, every burn, every silence, it all leads here. To this cold, distant moon where sunlight barely touches the ice. In February 2026, the first gravitational readings showed something incredible. The object had begun slowing again. Not much, but just enough to suggest intentional control. For something moving at over 120 kilometers per second, that's not physics. That's piloting. It was adjusting its speed as if preparing to enter orbit. Not around Jupiter itself, but around Ganymede. NASA, ESA, and the Japanese Space Agency began running simulations. If it maintains its current velocity decay rate, the object will reach stable insertion within 8 minutes of its closest pass. 8 minutes too precise to be natural, and too perfect to ignore. Meanwhile, the Juno probe started picking up new data. At first, it was faint, an oscillating pulse in Jupiter's magnetosphere. The same rhythmic signal that 3I Atlas had emitted weeks earlier near the Sunday. But now it was stronger. And this time it wasn't alone, because beneath that signal there was another, a secondary frequency, fainter, echoing it. 2 synchronized sources, 2 beacons. Scientists ran cross-checks across every available telescope, but only one object had been confirmed visually, meaning the other one might already be there. Had something reached Jupiter before we even noticed? Was 3I Atlas arriving to rendezvous? For centuries, we've looked at Jupiter as a place of storms, chaotic, loud, untamed. But its upper atmosphere hides layers of silence so deep even light struggles to escape. In those depths, electromagnetic readings behave strangely, bending, scattering, vanishing. If you wanted to hide, Jupiter would be perfect. If you wanted to communicate silently across millions of miles, its magnetic field could carry your signal like a whisper through the dark. And that's exactly what it seems to be doing. Ground-based detectors in Chile and Hawaii started picking up low-frequency waves that shouldn't exist in nature waves, synchronized to Jupiter's magnetic rotation. When decoded visually, the pattern resembled a spiral. The same spiral 3I Atlas transmitted near the Sunday. It wasn't noise. It was coordination. Think about what this means. If 3I Atlas was launched from another star and it's now slowing down near Jupiter while communicating with something already there, then we may be watching the assembly of a network. Not invasion, not destruction, but construction. A cosmic relay built not for us, but for something bigger. Something meant to bridge the stars. You see, the gas giants are natural energy wells. Their magnetospheres can generate power beyond anything we can build on Earth. A single probe orbiting Jupiter could harvest energy indefinitely, relaying signals across interstellar space. It's not a base, it's a beacon. And suddenly, all those strange electromagnetic anomalies across Mars and Earth begin to make sense. Because if Jupiter becomes the anchor, the rest of the system becomes the web. One signal connecting everything. By March 17th, 2026, the predicted arrival date, the object's velocity will have decayed by nearly 20%. No natural comet behaves that way. It's as if 3I Atlas is preparing for a controlled insertion. And there's more. Infrared sensors on Juno have already detected faint thermal traces on Ganymede's surface. Small, circular regions warming by a few degrees, far too localized to be geological. They appear and disappear every few hours, arranged in a pattern not random but deliberate. A triangle, each point exactly 440 kilometers apart. When overlaid on a magnetic field map, those points align with 3 zones of high conductivity, almost as if something below the ice was activating, something waiting for a signal. At this point, every public data feed went dark. Juno's live telemetry was cut. ESA's observation archive was locked, and NASA's public solar logs ended on the same timestamp. The official reason? scheduled maintenance. But no one believes that. The last unfiltered observation came from a private observatory in Namibia. For less than 1 second, their infrared array caught a frame of Ganymede's night side illuminated by 3 faint blue flares. They pulsed once, then went dark. When slowed down, each pulse lasted exactly 11.1 seconds, the same period as the original 3-eye atlas heartbeat. Coincidence? Maybe. But to the few scientists who've seen the raw data, it looked like something ancient had just reawakened. For now, there's no official update, no new images, no public confirmation, just silence. And in that silence, a growing unease. Because the deeper we look into the void, the more it feels like the void is looking back. We don't know what's inside 3-eye atlas. We don't know what it's doing near Jupiter. But one thing is certain, this isn't over. It's only beginning. And when the next transmission comes, it won't just be data. It'll be a message. Maybe not to NASA. Maybe not to us. But to whoever or whatever sent it here in the first place. When the signal from Jupiter first reached Earth, it wasn't heard in sound. It was seen a pattern of numbers buried in static. At first, no one noticed. It looked like solar interference, the kind of noise radio astronomers scrub out every day. But when a small independent observatory in New Zealand cross-checked the frequency with Jupiter's magnetosphere, the numbers aligned perfectly. The transmission wasn't random. It was synchronized with the planet's rotation and with something beneath Ganymede's ice. For hours, the pattern repeated. Then it stopped. And in the silence that followed, every magnetic sensor on Earth began to pulse. It started as a faint vibration imperceptible, buried in the noise of the solar wind. But soon, the pattern became clear. A slow, rhythmic beat, identical to the 11-minute cycle that had followed 3-eye atlas since its first appearance. The same pulse that echoed from the Sun, then Jupiter, was now resonating in Earth's own field. No one could explain it. The magnetic north wavered by a fraction of a degree. Satellites began to record small but synchronized surges in background radiation. And deep underground, instruments built to detect earthquakes started picking up micro-tremors perfectly timed with the pulse. As if the entire planet was breathing in rhythm with something far away. Governments called for silence. Data was sealed. Press releases were drafted and retracted within hours. NASA claimed it was a magnetospheric coupling event. ESA called it background interference. But the few who had seen the raw data said it was too organized to be interference. They described it as a signal, not noise, a structure. Repeating, measured, intelligent. Then, a week later, it changed. The pulses stopped being global. They began to move, sweeping across longitudes like a slow tide. The rhythm circled the planet every 24 hours, locked perfectly to Earth's rotation. It wasn't just visiting us anymore. It was tracking us. At first, people online thought it was a hoax, a viral story designed to stir fear. But when compasses started twitching in unison across continents, when pilots reported strange deviations in navigation instruments, and when migratory birds began flying erratically off course, the story broke containment. The world began to pay attention. scientists at MIT managed to decode one segment of the frequency sweep. They noticed that every fourth pulse contained a frequency slightly higher than the rest, a harmonic step, like a note being raised on a scale. When those frequencies were converted into a visible spectrum, the result was shocking. A map, a rough outline of the solar system, and a new trajectory leaving Jupiter, bending towards Saturn. It was as if something out there was drawing its next move, a celestial blueprint traced in the magnetic heartbeat of our world. In late February, amateur astronomers began to notice something unusual near the orbit of Saturn. A faint reflection, metallic, rhythmic, spinning at a steady rate. At first, it was dismissed as space debris, but then it changed speed, reversing rotation and stabilizing itself along the ecliptic. That's when the pattern stopped matching Jupiter's signal and started matching ours. For the first time, the pulse that had echoed across the solar system was now being answered. The night it happened, global magnetometers recorded a spike unlike anything seen in modern history. It lasted exactly 1 hour and 11 minutes. Then silence, total silence. Even the usual background hum of the Earth's magnetic field went flat, as if someone had muted the planet. And in that blank void of silence, radio telescopes in Chile detected a single narrow-band transmission. No words, no static, just a tone, a rising tone, faint, precise, and painfully beautiful. Its frequency drifted downward slowly, as though something was descending. When the data was analyzed, the tone's modulation matched an ancient broadcast, the WOW signal from 1977. Almost identical in structure, almost as if whatever had sent the first message nearly 50 years ago was responding again. The only difference was that this one wasn't coming from deep space. It was coming from inside our solar system. The following morning, the Deep Space Network confirmed what everyone feared, but few were willing to say. 3I Atlas had changed course again. Its new trajectory placed it on a slow, sweeping path, one that would bring it beyond Saturn into the outer dark. But just before it left the region of Jupiter's influence, something else detached from it. 3 smaller objects, faint, triangular, and moving in perfect formation, drifted free from the main body, each about 100 meters wide, glowing dimly with that same internal cyan light. They didn't accelerate. They didn't drift aimlessly. They formed a perfect equilateral triangle and began to follow a separate course straight toward Earth. Panic would have been easy, but by now the world was numb. We'd watched this thing cross the stars, break the laws of motion, whisper to our planet's core, and now send fragments our way. NASA called them debris. The Pentagon called them probes. But the truth is, no one really knew. Because just as those objects began closing the distance, every radar that tried to lock onto them failed. They reflected nothing. They absorbed light. They were invisible except to infrared faint shadows moving through the cold. And then came the strangest part. As they entered lunar orbit, the signal that had pulsed for months went quiet. Every receiver on Earth went dark. For 3 days, nothing. Then, on the 4th day, the entire network came alive again. Only this time, the pulse wasn't coming from deep space. It was coming from the moon. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter picked up the source first. a single point on the far side, just beyond the rim of the Tsiolkovsky crater. A small blue glow, pulsing every 11 minutes, exactly the same rhythm. It wasn't big, maybe 50 meters across, but it was alive with energy, flickering in perfect synchronization with Earth's magnetic cycle. Whatever 3I Atlas had sent had arrived. Radio telescopes tuned to the pulse and began receiving data packets hidden within the signal. They weren't words or symbols. They were coordinates, hundreds of them scattered across Earth's oceans and uninhabited deserts. Each point lining up with ancient impact sites, magnetic anomalies, and archaeological zones long thought to be random. It was as if the signal was activating something, or waking something up. Around the world, deep-sea monitoring buoys began picking up low-frequency rumbles. At first, they sounded like earthquakes, long, droning moans rising from the abyss. But when layered together, those frequencies formed a pattern identical to the pulse. Every tremor on the ocean floor was keeping time with 3I Atlas. It wasn't just a visitor anymore. It had become part of the system, part of us. In the silence that followed, one thought echoed louder than any signal could carry. What if this was never about invasion or exploration? What if it was installation? Because sometimes, to understand the universe, you don't need to look up. You just have to listen to what's already beneath your feet. The strange blue glow on the far side of the moon became the center of every conversation on Earth. Governments called it an anomaly. News outlets called it a natural reflection. But astronomers knew better. It wasn't a reflection, it was a response. Every time Earth's magnetosphere pulsed, the glow pulsed back, delayed by exactly 1.26 seconds, the time it takes for a radio wave to travel from Earth to the moon and back. It was like an echo, a heartbeat that answered our own. Soon, more anomalies began to appear. Not in the sky this time, but under the oceans. In the Mariana Trench, an array of hydrophones detected low pulsing vibrations, the same 11-minute rhythm. In the Pacific and Indian Oceans, sonar buoys picked up faint metallic resonances, something moving far below the thermal layers. Whatever was happening on the moon, it was rippling through the planet. When the readings were cross-analyzed, the locations matched perfectly with the coordinates hidden inside the lunar transmission. Every single one. 2 deep-sea trenches, 1 desert plateau in Antarctica, and an ancient crater in northern Siberia. 4 points. 4 signals. Each one now beginning to glow faintly on satellite infrared. It was as if Earth itself was responding to whatever had landed on the moon. The signals weren't destructive, no shock waves, no heat bursts. They were gentle, rhythmic, almost careful. Dr. Lena Ortiz, the cryptographer who'd first decoded 3I Atlas's solar pulse, called it a handshake. 2 systems recognizing each other, 2 programs connecting across cosmic distance. But here's where it gets even stranger. Every time the moon pulse flared, power grids across the northern hemisphere registered microsurges, tiny synchronized spikes in voltage. They were too small to trigger blackouts, but too regular to be coincidence. And each spike carried a faint electromagnetic signature identical to that of 3I Atlas during its perihelion near the Sunday. It was as if energy from the moon was subtly feeding Earth's magnetic field. And as the pattern continued, something impossible happened. Earth's Schumann resonance, the planet's natural heartbeat, began to shift. For decades, it had held steady at around 7.83 Hertz, but over the course of 3 weeks, it climbed 8.1, 8.4, 8.7 Hertz. Then it stabilized exactly at 11, the same number that haunted the object's every move. By now, the pattern was impossible to ignore. 3I Atlas had left Jupiter. Its fragments had reached the Moon, and Earth itself had begun to resonate with the same frequency. No announcement came from NASA, no press release from the Pentagon, just silence. But silence can speak louder than words. Because in that silence, hundreds of amateur astronomers around the world began posting the same thing online, a faint blue shimmer outlining the Moon every night, visible even through low-power telescopes. It looked like the entire lunar surface was breathing. Then, out of nowhere, the global deep space network received a burst. Not from the Moon this time, from deep beyond Saturn. The source was weak, but unmistakable, the original 3I Atlas. It was still transmitting. For nearly 38 minutes, it pulsed at full intensity. The frequency matched the new Schumann resonance 11 Hz. Each pulse carried nested harmonics patterns that looked like digital packets, each repeating a 3-part structure. When converted to a visual grid, the result was haunting. It wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It was a face. Not human, not animal. Something abstract, like the outline of an eye, fractured and shifting, staring straight back through the static. Analysts at SETI and the Galileo project tried to decode it, but every attempt failed. The data would only stabilize when synchronized with Earth's magnetic pulse. It was as though the transmission wasn't meant to be read on a screen, it was meant to be felt through the planet itself. And once again, as soon as they realized that, the signal cut off, almost as if it knew it had been understood. The following night, something subtle changed in the skies. High above the atmosphere, the auroras began to behave strangely. Instead of flowing ribbons of green and red, they formed spiral structures, slow-moving, geometric patterns that lingered for hours. Their cores glowed faint blue, matching the Moon's pulse. Photographs from Iceland, Norway, and Alaska showed the same phenomenon, a perfect spiral hovering at the horizon, rotating in time with the planetary heartbeat. No satellites, no rockets, no geomagnetic storms, nothing could explain it. It was as if the sky itself was becoming part of a signal chain. Some scientists started whispering theories they wouldn't dare say in front of cameras. That maybe 3I Atlas wasn't sending data at all. Maybe it was uploading something. They began studying fluctuations in the ionosphere, and what they found was chilling. Minute changes in atmospheric density aligned perfectly with each lunar pulse. The air itself was vibrating with the same rhythm. The implication was terrifying. Whatever was happening wasn't limited to machines or instruments. It was resonating through everything. Water, air, stone, even the human body. Hospitals began reporting strange data from EEG monitors. Patients in deep sleep or coma were showing synchronized brainwave activity at 11 Hz regardless of age, location, or medical condition. People who'd never met, separated by oceans, were dreaming on the same frequency. And in those dreams, some claimed to see the same image. A massive, silent shape drifting through a field of blue light. An object the size of a mountain. Smooth and shining, with a single line of light cutting across its surface like a closed eye waiting to open. They called it the Watcher. By now, no one was laughing anymore. Governments quietly shut down communication with observatories. The public data feed for the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter was replaced with looping footage from the previous month. The United Nations issued a vague statement about coordinated monitoring of extraterrestrial phenomena. But everyone already knew. The real monitoring wasn't for space. It was for us. Still, the signal continued calm, steady, deliberate. Every 11 minutes, another pulse. And every time, the world seemed to hold its breath. The sky looked normal. The moon hung quiet and white. But beneath the calm, something was humming. Something deep and resonant, threading through every ocean, every wire, every heartbeat. Humanity stood in stillness, not in fear, but in awe, because somewhere in the cold dark beyond Saturn, the silent traveler known as 3I Atlas had set something in motion, and it was no longer a question of what it was. It was a question of when it would reveal itself. As the days passed, the world began to adjust to the new rhythm, that quiet, invisible pulse that everyone could feel but no one could explain. It was subtle, like the faint vibration of a distant engine beneath the noise of life. Some people swore they couldn't sleep without hearing it in their dreams. Others said it followed them in the flicker of streetlights, the hum of machines, even the static between radio stations. It wasn't just a sound, it was a presence. And whether you believed in it or not, it was spreading. In late March, astronomers detected a new development. The lunar pulse was no longer stationary. It had begun to drift a slow migration across the far side of the moon, moving just a few kilometers each day. But this movement wasn't random. It traced a perfect path. When mapped across the lunar surface, the pulse was outlining something massive, a circular formation stretching over 400 kilometers wide, a pattern hidden beneath the ancient dust, something that had been there long before humans ever looked up at the sky. The circular path matched no known crater, ridge, or geological anomaly. But when overlaid on magnetic field readings taken from the Apollo era, the shape aligned perfectly with faint distortions in the moon's subsurface, distortions too symmetrical to be natural. It was as if 3I Atlas had activated a dormant structure buried beneath the surface. NASA's Deep Space Network attempted to ping the coordinates with a focused radar pulse. For nearly half an hour, there was nothing. Then a reply. A low-frequency echo came back, delayed by a full 7 seconds. That's impossible for radar. It meant the signal wasn't bouncing off the moon's surface. It was traveling through something. Something hollow. The news never made it public. Instead, an internal memo circulated through NASA labeled Class 9 Secure. It stated only 2 sentences. Is greater than subsurface resonance confirmed. Structure depth unknown. Recommend immediate freeze on lunar data access. After that, the public data feed was cut again, this time indefinitely. But amateur astronomers kept watching, and that's when they noticed something strange. Each time the lunar pulse flashed, the faint reflection from 3I Atlas, now far beyond Saturn, flickered in perfect sync, as if the two were still connected, separated by over 1 billion kilometers, yet beating as one. Then came the turning point. On April 2nd, a team of engineers at the European Space Agency detected an unplanned transmission burst on one of their dormant lunar relays, a satellite that hadn't been active in over a decade. The transmission wasn't noise. It was data, packets of digital information, perfectly structured, but encrypted in a format no computer could parse. The strangest part wasn't the signal itself. It was the origin. The relay's onboard logs showed that the transmission hadn't come from Earth or from space. It had come up from the moon. When the data was cross-referenced, something impossible emerged. The transmission's embedded timestamp was off not by minutes or hours, but by 53 years. The same year the original WOW signal was detected. It was as though the moon had recorded something half a century ago and was only now playing it back. Inside the data packets were waveform sequences, encoded images, and a repeating number set. The 15th of August 1977, the date of the WOW signal, followed by a series of coordinates that pointed not to the moon, not to Earth, but directly to Jupiter's moon Ganymede, the same world where 3I Atlas had lingered before vanishing into deep space. The idea spread quickly through the quiet corners of the scientific community. What if the WOW signal wasn't a message to Earth, but a message through it? What if it was a test transmission, a seed sent decades ago, waiting for a system like 3I Atlas to awaken the rest of the network? That would mean this wasn't a single event. It was the continuation of something that began long before we even realized we were being watched. The alignment came next. Astronomers predicted that in early April, the moon, Earth, and Jupiter would form a straight line, a perfect syzygy, a gravitational and magnetic bridge between all three bodies. If the transmissions were connected, that alignment would act like a channel, a cosmic corridor for whatever was moving between them. And on the night of April 8th, that's exactly what happened. At 3:11 UTC, every magnetometer across the world registered a simultaneous spike. The pulse from the moon intensified, rising from 11 Hz to something just above 13. Then silence again. Every satellite in low Earth orbit went offline for 39 seconds. Communications dropped. Navigation systems froze. And in that brief, eerie pause, the auroras returned brighter, sharper, forming a massive ring that stretched across the entire northern hemisphere. From space, it looked like a luminous halo circling the planet. Inside that aurora, cameras from the International Space Station recorded faint arcs of light curving patterns resembling circuitry or veins of glowing energy threading through the atmosphere. Each pulse of light coincided with a heartbeat from the moon. Whatever was happening wasn't random anymore. It was orchestrated, controlled, as if a process had begun, one that had always been waiting for the right alignment. Down on Earth, ordinary people began to notice strange behavior in technology. Wireless signals fluctuated. Digital clocks desynchronized. jumping back by 11 seconds, then forward again. Smartphones rebooted in perfect sync, displaying blank screens for exactly 1 minute and 11 seconds. And when they turned back on, some displayed coordinates, the same 4 numbers that had appeared in the lunar data. 4 points across the planet, each already glowing faintly in infrared. It was as if the signal had finally reached the ground. Whatever was happening above was now here. Every sensor, every circuit, every living thing connected by that same hum. And somewhere beyond Saturn, the last trace of 3I Atlas faded from view. But before it vanished completely, one final burst was recorded. A fragment of data, short and simple, just 3 words when translated through the same encryption key used for the lunar pulse, is greater than "we are home." The signal stopped, and the skies went quiet again. But deep beneath the oceans, and beneath the frozen crust of the moon, something continued to glow faint, steady, alive. Not broadcasting anymore, just listening, as if waiting for an answer. For a brief moment, the world convinced itself that the silence meant safety. No new pulses, no glowing skies, no strange signals creeping through the static. Just stillness, almost too still. Governments reopened transmissions. Satellites blinked back to life. Astronomers turned their telescopes away, trying to focus on anything but that silent part of the sky. But the quiet didn't last. Because silence, as it turns out, was never the end. It was the loading screen. In early May, something began happening at the coordinates hidden in the lunar signal. At first, they were nothing more than patches of land and sea, a frozen valley in Antarctica, a deep trench in the Pacific, a desert in northern Africa, and a salt flat in South America. But when satellite scans revisited those same points, something had changed. Each site was emitting low-frequency vibrations, not random tremors, harmonics. Mathematical frequencies matching the same 11 Hertz rhythm that had haunted the planet for months. And all of them, every single one, pulsed in sync with the moon's orbital period. 4 points, 4 beats, 1 rhythm. The Earth was no longer just listening. It was participating. Underneath the South Pacific, a deep-sea submersible launched by the Japanese Oceanic Agency captured the first visual evidence. Nearly 7 miles beneath the surface, floodlights revealed something vast, a smooth metallic surface stretching out in every direction, curved and seamless like the hull of a ship buried in the seabed. But this was no wreck. The structure pulsed with internal light, faint, blue, deliberate, and when the submersible's sonar pinged against it, the sound came back warped, as if the signal had passed through liquid metal. Then all contact was lost. The crew above never heard another word from the sub, just one final transmission before it vanished completely. Is greater than "it's not a structure, it's breathing." The footage leaked 3 days later. By then, it was too late to contain the panic. Every major network aired the same grainy clip, a massive curved shape beneath the ocean, faint light rippling across its surface like bioluminescent skin. The pattern wasn't random. It was identical to the pulse of 3I Atlas. The world had just discovered that the same technology or organism that had drifted across interstellar space was already embedded inside our planet. At first, scientists argued it must have been there for millennia, dormant under layers of rock and ocean until the signal woke it up. Others said it was newly arrived at delivery, installed silently during the months when 3i Atlas had blocked the Sunday. But a few whispered the unthinkable. What if Earth wasn't the host? What if it was part of a network and it had just been reconnected? As the vibrations deepened, strange electromagnetic distortions began sweeping across the world. Compass needles no longer pointed north. Auroras now appeared at the equator. Even thunderstorms began forming in perfect geometric patterns, lightning striking at precise intervals as if following a command. And then came the skylights. At night, satellites captured faint blue arcs connecting the 4 activation sites, glowing filaments stretching through the atmosphere like veins of energy linking continents. From orbit, they formed a perfect ring around the planet. When mapped, that ring aligned exactly with the Earth's magnetic equator. It was too perfect to be natural. Meanwhile, the moon's pulse had grown stronger, no longer once every 11 minutes, but steady, continuous, like a deep mechanical heartbeat. Lunar dust on the far side began to move, drifting in thin sheets suspended by invisible charge. High-resolution telescopes from the James Webb Space Telescope confirmed what no one wanted to believe. A circular section of the moon's surface was slowly rising. It was lifting piece by piece, revealing black, smooth material beneath, shaped like an enormous ring. Suddenly, the network connected. Every frequency on Earth went silent for 11 seconds. Then, a low hum, not through speakers, not through machines, but through the ground itself. It was as if the planet had become one massive transmitter. The sound wasn't just heard. It was felt in bones, in walls, in oceans, a deep harmonic resonance that seemed to bypass the ears entirely. Then came the pattern, 3 pulses. A pause, 3 more, and then one long continuous tone that made the air shimmer. At that moment, observatories worldwide turned their instruments toward the moon. The light from the exposed ring intensified, and in its center, a beam of blue light shot straight upward, not into space, but toward deep interstellar coordinates where 3i Atlas had first been seen entering the solar system. Every telescope caught it, a perfect pillar of light reaching out into the stars, bending slightly as if guided by something unseen. And then something else happened. The signal was mirrored. From deep beyond Saturn, another beam answered, faint at first, then growing stronger until the two met in the void. A bridge of light spanning billions of kilometers, connecting Earth, the moon, and the cold darkness beyond. For the first time, the entire solar system began to vibrate with the same resonance. Saturn's rings flickered like waves of glass. Jupiter's magnetosphere rippled with auroral fire. Even the sun itself responded, its corona pulsing in sync with the rhythm. It was a network, an awakening. Every signal, every orbit, every magnetic field humming to the same song, the song of 3i Atlas. On Earth, cities flickered as the pulse reached them. Streetlights dimmed and brightened in waves. Power grids synchronized across nations without any connection. Even heart monitors in hospitals began to sync to the same pattern. 11 beats. Pause. 11 beats. No one spoke. No one needed to. every human on Earth felt the same thing in that instant, a pull, like gravity but softer, inward and upward all at once. For a fleeting second, time itself seemed to hesitate. Clocks froze. Birds stopped mid-flight. The world inhaled. And then the voice came, not through speakers, not through radios, through the sky itself. It wasn't words, not in any language we knew. It was tones, harmonics, patterns of resonance that seemed to bypass language and speak directly to the mind. Those who heard it described it differently. Some said it sounded like music, others like a whisper behind the eyes. But everyone understood the same meaning. Something ancient had returned, something that had been here before us, beneath us, waiting. And now it was awake. The resonance grew until it was no longer a sound, it was a presence. Every structure on Earth, from skyscrapers to mountain peaks, seemed to hum in unison. Seismographs maxed out. Magnetometers spun endlessly. And in the skies above, the auroral rings merged into a single radiant halo encircling the entire planet. The light was soft, almost gentle. It didn't burn. It illuminated everything with a strange bluish glow, the same hue that had marked 3I Atlas since the beginning. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. Total silence. And for the first time in recorded history, the entire world, billions of people looked up at the sky at the exact same second. The moon had changed. Its surface was no longer dull grey. It now shimmered like polished glass, a massive circular structure faintly rotating beneath the dust. From Earth, you could see thin lines of light crawling across it, patterns, almost like circuitry, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire moon became a luminous eye staring back at the planet. At that same moment, a transmission burst through every medium simultaneously. No frequency, no origin, just one phrase, translated perfectly across every language on Earth, is greater than the interval is complete. If you've made it this far, you already feel it, don't you? That subtle hum in the air, the pulse that's not really a sound, but something deeper. Maybe it's just in your head. Or maybe, like the rest of us, you've started to hear the signal too. And if you want to know where it goes next, what the next transmission will bring you, already know what to do. Subscribe. Stay awake, because the next pulse could arrive any minute now.